President-elect Donald Trump announced this morning that he has selected former Texas Governor Rick Perry for Energy Secretary. He cited Perry's experience in creating a business climate in Texas that produced millions of jobs. Perry says it's a tremendous honor and said he would work to make America energy independent. While running for president in 2012, Perry identified energy as a department he would like to eliminate, though he famously couldn't recall the name during a debate.
I would do away with the education, the commerce, and let's see, I can't. The third one I can't, sorry. Oops.
There's no indication at this point the incoming Trump administration wants to get rid of the Energy Department. Director of the Center for Presidential History at SMU, Jeff Engel, is here to talk about Donald Trump's inner circle taking shape. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, it's good to see you.
Okay, so Rick Perry, heading the Energy Department, he's of course a big supporter of the oil and gas industry, but Energy Department also has a lot to do with nuclear weapons development.
Yeah, about 60% of the Energy Department's budget goes to developing and protecting the nuclear weapons systems for the United States, and also a lot of fundamental applied research. The last two people who headed up this department both had PhDs in nuclear physics. Rick Perry does not, but nonetheless, he's now heading an agency that he once said he wanted to get rid of.
Yeah, 14 years as Texas governor, lots of administrative experience. Okay, National Security Advisor you wanted to talk about for Donald Trump, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Now he's made some very tough statements about Islam.
He has. He's been very out in front in saying that we have a global war that's been going on as really a culture war. But more important than that, I think we need to take a step back and remember what the purpose of the National Security Advisor is. Traditionally, this is a position which is supposed to collate information, essentially bring in different opinions from across the government, and essentially be what we like to call an honest broker to the president, essentially making sure the president has all range of opinions. This is a little bit problematic because Mike Flynn traditionally has been a person who doesn't like to change his opinion, who knows what he knows and doesn't like to move off it. And so it's very unusual to have that type of personality in this position. It really suggests that Donald Trump is going to be getting information from just a few limited sources.
Okay, so the Secretary of State pick, ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson. Some very notable Republicans yesterday from the establishment, praising the choice. Robert Gates, James Baker, Condoleezza Rice. But Tillerson could be facing, well, let's say an interesting confirmation hearing. Yeah, because of his friendship with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, we have to sort of pull apart what the criticism has been thus far of Tillerson. It's not necessarily that he is head of one of the largest companies in the world. That in and of itself typically doesn't disqualify somebody for the position. It's actually his relationship with Russia, and of course Russia has been in the news for rather unpleasant ways in politics over the last couple of days, with the CIA and other intelligence agencies coming out and not suggesting but flat out saying that the Russians tried to influence, in fact did influence, the American election. And this is really, we're walking into unprecedented waters here, because Donald Trump has absolutely come out and said he does not believe the assessment of his own intelligence agencies. And what's more impressive, he said he's no longer taking intelligence briefings, or at least taking them very infrequently. And this suggests to me that he really doesn't understand the purpose of an intelligence briefing, because it's not just to get information. It also is a time for the president to ask questions, to ask the intelligence people to find out things that he doesn't already know. Donald Trump apparently doesn't think he needs to ask more questions.
How do you think Tillerson's then confirmation hearing will play out? Senators John McCain, Lindsey Graham, but also Marco Rubio, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, all these Republicans are sort of raising some concerns.
Well, remember, the Republicans, as you point out, only have a very slim majority in the Senate. They only have about a two-seat majority. And there's more than two people who have already expressed their concerns about Tillerson's connections to Russia, and frankly about Donald Trump's connections to Russia. So we are perhaps facing a situation which we really haven't seen since John Tower of Texas was voted down by the Senate in 1989, where we'll have an initial appointee of a president perhaps be under fire and perhaps even be rejected simply because of these broader ties to Russia.
It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. All righty, Jeff Engel, thank you so much for the chat.
Good to see you as always.